Amon Göth, Oskar Dirlewanger, Ilse Koch, and Josef Mengele. These are some of the most important names who were part of this sinister organization. Today, in this new military history video, we will delve into the life and work of each of them, their origins, their crimes, and their end. In 1920, in Germany devastated by World War I, the National Socialist Party was born, with a young Adolf Hitler at its head. It quickly began to grow in popularity, and also in enemies, most of them belonging to German communist organizations, which provoked and attacked its members. Thus, the Nazi leader understood that he needed a division responsible for his safety and that of his followers. Thus, in 1925, the Schutzstaffel, better known as the SS, was born.
Von Hitler und den Generälen war immer wieder zugesichert worden, die Wehrmacht ist der alleinige Waffenträger der Nation. Und jetzt war ganz klar, hier wurde also eine Kraft neben der Wehrmacht aufgebaut, die also dem Heer die Macht streitig machen wollte.
Although it had humble origins, it rapidly gained power. By the time Hitler took over Germany in 1933, the SS was one of the party's most important paramilitary organizations. Within the country, its main tasks were to enforce Nazi racial policies. That is, to harass anyone considered inferior. But once World War II broke out, its work expanded. Not only did they actively participate in the conflict's brutal combat, but they were also in charge of the most terrible places of that era: the concentration camps. It quickly became clear that SS members were characterized not only by their blind fanaticism toward the Führer, but also by their lack of humanity. Even some soldiers in the regular German army denounced their actions, disgusted by the crimes they committed. However, Hitler had given them free rein to terrorize the Reich's enemies. Next, we'll show you some of the worst members of this brutal organization and the terrible acts they carried out. Amon Göth, born on December 11, 1908, in Vienna, which was then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Captivated by Nazi racist ideology, he dropped out of school at 17 to join the party branch in his home country, and soon after, the SS. During these years, he was involved in numerous crimes, such as arms smuggling. He was even linked to the assassination of the Austrian Chancellor in a failed coup. Wanted by the authorities, he left the country and took refuge in Germany. Around this time, another aspect of his life that would define his later years also emerged: his alcohol problem. Once World War II began, Guth began to gain popularity among his superiors, who admired his fervent anti-Semitic hatred. He served in Poland, where he efficiently administered the hunt for the Jewish people, taking captured individuals to concentration camps or eliminating them through cruel massacres. His excellent performance earned him a very important role. On February 11, 1943, he was ordered to build the Plaszow Forced Labor Center, also on Polish soil, using prisoners from other camps. Once completed, Guth would become its commandant. During the month it took to establish the facility, the cruelty of this man was already evident. Anyone who did not carry out the tasks satisfactorily was deported to extermination camps or murdered on the spot by members of the SS.
The facility was quickly constructed at Krakow, Warsaw, using the newcomers, and within weeks it was a fully operational concentration camp. Upon its completion, Goeth delivered a speech to the camp's inhabitants in which he ominously stated, "I am your God."
Executions at Plaszow were commonplace, and any excuse would do. Guth carried out many of them personally from his office window, shooting prisoners who stopped to rest, even if only for a few seconds. If he didn't carry out the killings himself, he would set his 2 dogs trained to tear and mutilate on the victims. No one was safe. When, in May 1944, he was informed that approximately 10,000 Hungarian Jews would be taken to Plaszow, he received orders to make room in the camp. Without a trace of compassion, he instructed his henchmen to round up all the children and put them on trains bound for Auschwitz, where the gas chambers awaited them. Collective punishments were also very common. If one of the captives committed an offense serious enough in Guth's eyes, his entire work crew risked execution. His reign of terror ended when he was accused of stealing prisoners' belongings, which belonged to the German government. He was even convicted of excessive mistreatment, something almost unthinkable under the Nazi regime. However, he was never convicted due to his alcoholism and even alleged mental illness. In 1945, he was captured by the Allies and, after many survivors testified to the atrocities he had committed, he was tried the following year. Sentenced to death, he was hanged by the neck very close to the site of the Plaszow camp. His last words were, "Heil Hitler." Oskar Dirlewanger. Born in the German Empire on September 26, 1895. He fought in the First World War in a series of brutal battles, many of which left him wounded. He was forced to leave the front lines more than 6 times, though he always returned to defend his nation. By the time the conflict ended, Oskar was left with approximately 40% of his body disabled. Not only that, he was also severely traumatized, leaving him with a violent, unstable, and alcoholic personality. Once the Nazi Party was established, Dirlewanger, who shared its ideology, joined it, later also joining the SS. But like Goeth, his years in the organization were plagued by crimes, embezzlement, money laundering, and illegal weapons possession, among others. But when he was accused of sexually abusing a 14-year-old girl in 1934, not even his powerful connections were able to get him out of jail. However, after a few years in prison and a brief participation in the Spanish Civil War, he returned to Germany to become an SS lieutenant. In 1940, with the Second World War already underway, the Germans found it difficult to fight the Polish resistance, which used elusive guerrilla tactics. It was then that some SS leaders came up with the idea of recruiting men accused of poaching to track down these enemies, given their tracking abilities. When they couldn't find the necessary numbers, they turned to any kind of criminal. But they needed someone capable of controlling these people. Thus was established the Dirlewanger Brigade of around 4,000 men, which would become infamous for the atrocities it committed.
La unidad de Dirlewanger es repudiada por la Wehrmacht y en gran parte de las SS por ser delincuentes, y sí lo eran. Este es uno de los aspectos más asquerosos del Tercer Reich, y es un fruto lógico de los nazis porque movilizaban gente así.
Under the pretext that the Polish civilian population was hiding the resistance, hundreds of innocent people were tortured, raped, and murdered. Often, after being abused, the women were injected with strychnine, a compound that caused an agonizing death. Their genitals were also often burned with gasoline, and they sat back and watched them die. Their crimes even provoked complaints from other members of the SS, but they were never convicted, and the torture and massacres continued. Entire villages were murdered after the Dirlewanger Brigade locked them in a barn and then set it on fire. It is estimated that more than 30,000 people became their victims. When the population of Warsaw rebelled against their captors in 1944, this group was sent to suppress the citizens. Knowing they had free rein, Dirlewanger and his men committed all kinds of chilling acts against the city's inhabitants. 3 hospitals were set on fire with staff and patients still inside, but not before the women were abused. Flamethrowers were used directly against the victims, and babies were mercilessly bayoneted to the terrified screams of their mothers.
In one appalling incident, Dirlewanger ordered the killing of 500 children in a daycare facility, and in order to save bullets, ordered his men to beat and bayonet the children to death. Just a small part of the 40,000 Poles the unit murdered in a 2-week orgy of terror.
However, the end of the war was near. In February 1945, due to a lack of men, they were rushed to the front to fight the Soviets. With a significant numerical disadvantage, they were quickly wiped out. Dirlewanger was wounded and had to be treated in a hospital. Many of his men, now leaderless, deserted, and the rest were captured by the Red Army. The brigade leader was still resting when the war ended, so he decided to escape. But in June, he was captured by the French. During his captivity, he died mysteriously. Some said it was from a heart attack, but others say that some Warsaw survivors recognized him and began beating him to death. At the time of his death, the Dirlewanger Brigade was credited with over 120,000 kills. Ilse Koch, born in Dresden, Germany, on September 22, 1906, she joined the Nazi Party in 1932, and 2 years later, at one of its meetings, she met her future husband, Karl Otto Koch. He was a respected member of the SS, who in 1937 was appointed commandant of the Buchenwald concentration camp, located in Germany. Political prisoners, homosexuals, Roma, and Jews were held there long before the start of World War II. When her husband moved to the camp, Ilse followed him, working as his secretary. Once the conflict broke out, captives arrived by the tens of thousands. Approximately 250,000 people passed through the Buchenwald camp. At least a quarter of them died there. The camp didn't have gas chambers. Deaths occurred from starvation, disease, or murder. And if rumors are true, Ilse Koch was the one who ordered many of them. Survivors recounted how the woman would roam the camp's dirt streets, abusing any prisoner who crossed her path. She would order guards to beat them, or even do it herself. It was said that she used a whip with razor blades at the end to tear at her targets, often resulting in their deaths. But one of the stories about Koch reached unimaginable levels of sadism. It was said that she had certain people murdered, then requested that their bodies be skinned. From these prisoners' skins, she ordered the creation of a lampshade, like a sinister and macabre trophy.
In Dachau wurde im Verlauf des Prozesses gegen das Personal des Konzentrationslagers Buchenwald die Angeklagte Ilse Koch vernommen. Die Frau des früheren Lagerkommandanten und sogenannte Kommandeuse von Buchenwald ist die einzige Frau unter den 31 Angeklagten. Die Anklage wirft ihr schwerste Vergehen gegen die Menschlichkeit vor. Dazu zählt der Besitz von präparierten Köpfen ermordeter Opfer und von Lampenschirmen aus Menschenhaut. Die Beweisstücke liegen dem Gericht vor.
There are also less credible rumors that Koch forced prisoners to have sex in front of her, or even participated in them. Those who did not satisfy her, according to these stories, were killed. As was the case with many members of the SS, her husband, Karl Otto Koch, was accused of theft and embezzlement and removed as commandant of Buchenwald. Ilse was in turn named as an accomplice in the crime. Karl Otto was sentenced to death by the Nazis themselves, while his wife was sentenced to a year in prison. When she was released, the war was over. Knowing what awaited her if she stayed, she tried to escape, but was recognized by a survivor and captured. Her trial gained notoriety when rumors of her sadistic behavior surfaced. However, due to lack of evidence, she was sentenced to life imprisonment, despite many clamoring for her execution. However, her mental health deteriorated considerably over the years. Convinced that the survivors of Buchenwald wanted to kill her, Ilse Koch hanged herself in her cell in 1967 at the age of 60. Her last words addressed to her son were, "There is no other way. For me, death is liberation." Josef Mengele, the Angel of Death. Unlike other well-known members of the SS, he joined in 1938, shortly before the start of World War II. Although he shared the party's ideology, he joined because it would give him access to test subjects to study his true obsession: genetics. He served in combat as a medical officer until a wound received in 1942 left him unfit for the front lines. Instead, he was transferred to the infamous Auschwitz-Birkenau camp. There, he served as chief doctor, although he also had a macabre hobby. He actively participated in prisoner selection, where those unable to perform work were sent directly to the gas chambers. This primarily included pregnant women, the elderly, and children. According to witnesses, Mengele displayed a carefree attitude, humming tunes while deciding who would live and who would die. The real reason for his interest in this process was that it allowed him to choose test subjects for his experiments. Fascinated by twins, people with dwarfism, and other genetic conditions, he would save them from the gas chambers to take them to another destination: his laboratory. Although they were better fed than the rest of the prisoners, these prisoners were subjected to brutal experiments, where they were subjected to harsh physical tests. They were also injected with various compounds to test their results, including diseases like typhus. He was also capable of severing a limb from one patient and sewing it onto the body of another, which frequently caused infection, followed by inevitable death. Many of them, weakened by months or years of captivity, were exhausted after the tests. Mengele then ordered them to be taken to the chambers without any mercy.
He wanted to play God. He wanted to find, by trial and error, how to create blue-eyed blondes, males or females in multiple numbers.
3,000 twins became Mengele's guinea pigs. When Russian soldiers liberated the Auschwitz camp in 1945, just 150 were still alive.
These gruesome ordeals continued until 1945. At the end of the war, Mengele fled Auschwitz to escape the Soviet armies and changed his identity, posing as an ordinary soldier. Under the name Helmut Gregor, he managed to escape to Italy and then Argentina, where he settled in 1949. Despite subsequent attempts to locate him, Mengele lived in South America until 1979. More than 30 years after the war ended, he died while swimming off the coast of Brazil after a heart attack. While their origins may be different, these four individuals share certain characteristics: sadism and indifference to human life that marked them as members of the brutal SS. Millions died at the hands of this organization during the war. And even those who managed to survive were traumatized by the actions of these individuals. We've reached the end of the video, and we want to ask you, which of these stories was the most shocking to you? Leave your answer in the comments box below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to learn about many more military events that left their mark on history.